Okay, good morning, guys. In case you can't tell by the tone already, this is not part of some setup. There's no punchline. We'll get back to all that tomorrow. I want to deal with some quick business and just make a couple of quick points based on some of the responses you gave me for my questions on Monday. Here's the fundamental issue as I see it. I've seen a steady decline in views of the videos and a steady decline in accessing of the e-text and supplemental videos. A lot of you have told me that you're headed straight to my math lab. Now, I understand if what you're interested in is getting the points, but I want you to understand that there's more to this whole process, not just the math process, but you being gone from the school environment. That's going to start to add up in terms of fatigue. So that has a lot to do with why there's all that silliness in the videos in the first place, right? Just to kind of explain what's going on, you've got to keep a sense of connection to the school that's social, that's emotional, over and above doing what you need to do to learn this stuff. So I want to stress again, make sure you are going through the steps in the order that I give them to you. To help with that, if you haven't stopped the video by now, or if you actually haven't watched it at all, you're not going to see this. There is somewhere in this video going to be a word that's going to show up on screen. I'm going to let you know when it's time. There is going to be a daily grade today, a second one that simply involves you going into a Schoology quiz and typing that word correctly. Please do not share that word with one another. This is a simple test to see who is going through the process of steps in the way that I've asked you to do them. Once again, the big takeaway before we get to the lesson for today is please continue to follow the steps. We're only a week in. Fatigue is going to set in as you try to cut corners on the process. Please do not do so. Okay, guys. So today, we're going to be continuing the work that was in yesterday's video on solving quadratic equations. Now remember, you didn't have any homework on this yesterday because of the quiz. I haven't had a chance to take a look at those scores yet because I film these a day in advance, but I'll take a look in the morning and then let you know if I have any notes or anything that I think I need to talk about. Now, to quickly review from yesterday, remember that the basic idea is that quadratic equation is an equation that contains any variable that's raised to the second power, which essentially means that we have more than one solution. So if you remember yesterday's video, and if you don't, it's still in the folder, and I recommend you go back and watch it. We're going to factor out this equation until we can get all of our x's to the first power, because once we have them to the first power, then we have a much easier time. Well, not a much easier time. That's how we go about solving for the various values. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples. One of them is going to be fairly simple, and one of them is going to be a little bit more complex. But they both come from the notes which have been attached. Now, there was a scanning error with my solution, so I went back and hand wrote all of those. So you'll notice when you see those that they look just a little different. So there's a couple here that I want you to take a look at. I'm going to show you a fairly simple one, and then I'm going to show you one that's a little bit more complex. The short version is, we know we're ready to go when we have all the x's to the first power. And generally, these are going to be parts of binomials, or they're just going to be a coefficient and an x by itself. And you'll see an example of both. So let's start with one that's a little bit simpler, and it's actually going to be the first one in your notes example. So we get x times 2x minus 7 equals 4. Now, in your notes, remember, there's a couple of steps that we have to make sure that we follow here. First, we're not ready to solve a quadratic equation until we get it in standard form set equal to 0. You also know you haven't quite done all the work until you see an x squared somewhere. So there's a couple of steps that we're going to take here. First thing I'm going to do is distribute this x through this binomial. So that's going to give us 2x squared minus 7x equals 4. So far, that shouldn't really be anything that's that overly complicated for you. Okay? Now, I have to put it in standard form equal to 0. So I need to move this 4 to the other side. So I'm just going to subtract 4 from both sides. That is going to give me 2x squared minus 7x minus 4 equals 0. And now, much like the examples you had yesterday, I'm now in a place where I'm ready to factor that trinomial out and then solve for the two values. And I want to make it clear, the answer isn't always just going to be two values. In this case it is. In the next one we're going to look at, the answer is going to have, the equation is going to have three solutions. So once again, kind of by means of trial and error, we know we only have two possible factors for 2x squared. That's 2x and x. We know since we have a negative sign before the 4 that we're going to have different signs here. So simply by trial and error, we're going to look at various factors that multiply to 4 that then when we FOIL everything through are going to give us the negative 7x we need in the middle. So I'm actually going to save you a little bit of time where that's concerned. That's going to be positive 1 and negative 4 in those positions. So 2x plus 1 and x minus 4. And if we FOIL that through, we can see that that gives us everything we need. Positive 1 times negative 4 gives us the negative 4 we need. Our outer part gives us negative 8x. Our inner part gives us positive 1x. Combining those two sets of like terms gives us negative 7x. So remember, all we're going to do now, because remember, as we talked about yesterday, as long as either one of these equals 0, then the entire equation is still technically correct. So we're going to set this one equal to 0, and we're going to set this one equal to 0, and both of those will be potential solutions. So we'll start with the first one up here. 2x plus 1 equals 0. We're going to subtract 1 from both sides. We get 2x equals negative 1. Divide the entire thing by 2. And that's going to give us x equals negative 1/2. Sorry for the glare on that. Hopefully you're able to see it. So there's one of our possible solutions. Now let's do the other possible solution. X minus 4. Well, this one's a lot easier. All we're going to do is add 4 to both sides. That's going to give us x equals 4. And there's our other solution. And sorry to work back over here to the other side of the board, but if one of our solutions is negative 1/2 and the other one is 4, then that means our possible solution set is negative 1/2 and 4. Relatively simple example there, okay? But we would enter in our answer just like this. X could either equal negative 1/2 or it could equal 4. Let's do one that's a little bit more complex than that, but that also comes from your notes, so you can take a look at it when you get a chance. So let's take a look at this one. This one's actually example number 9 from your notes. 2x cubed minus 4x squared minus 30x equals 0. Now remember, step 1 with any of these problems is, do we have a common factor? And in this case, yes, we do have a common factor. Okay? We have a 2 that factors into all of these, but we also have an x that factors into all of these. So we take out our 2x. That leaves us with x squared minus 2x minus 15. Now, I want you to note that even though we're going to have to factor this part, because this also has a variable in it, remember, to solve quadratic equations, we have to set every part that contains a variable equal to 0. Every single factor that has a variable, we're going to set it equal to 0. So don't forget about this part, because we're going to need to deal with it. But first, let's go ahead and factor this out. We need two numbers which multiply to equal negative 15, but which add together to equal negative 2. Hopefully everybody feels pretty good about that being negative 5 and positive 3. So now we actually have 3 parts we've got to deal with that could equal 0. Okay? 3 parts that we've got to deal with that could equal 0. First, let's do this part. 2x equals 0. Well, easy enough. Divide by 2. 0 divided by anything is just 0. So one of the possible solutions to this is 0. Let's do the second part. X minus 5 equals 0. Add 5 to both sides. We get x equals 5. Oh, by the way, the word you need to enter for the quiz is the word hygiene, spelled in all lowercase. It's on the screen right now. you're going to go to a second quiz, and it's simply going to ask you to type in the word. Now, it's going to score it based on you spelling it correctly, so make sure you do that. X equals 5. And then lastly, x plus 3 equals 0. Subtract 3, and we get x equals -3. So we have 3 possible answers. Any one of these answers plugged back in, and you can always plug in and check it, will give you the 0 that you're looking for. So our solution set here, we always want to put it in proper order, is -3, 0, and 5. So your homework tonight is going to give you the chance to practice with this. My plan is for your next quiz to be on Friday of this week. I am going to set a time so you can have it done so that I can have the grades all ready to go. But be practicing on this, and then if there's any concern with it, we can discuss it on Thursday during conference time. I really recommend you show up for that. Once again, thanks so much for your time. Don't forget to go to the assignment and enter in the word that was at the bottom of your screen. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.